Welcome into another edition of the Detroit Lions News podcast. I thought I added myself in. I did not add myself in, so we are off and ready to go. Kind of like that game today was a little bit boring in terms of like you thought like at one point that it was just gonna, the Lions were just gonna take control, whatever. It didn't end that way. It was just one of those boring games, which usually happens before Thanksgiving. If you go back in time and you look at the games before Thanksgiving, they usually end up pretty boring and it's kind of depressing. But Detroit Lions play in 4 days. They play at versus the Chicago Bears in 4 days on Thanksgiving, which we all know. Everyone is well aware of the schedule crunch that the Lions have yearly at Thanksgiving, and as Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. So this year they're going to be playing the Bears. That's going to be a good one. The Bears just lost to the Vikings in the most Chicago Bear way to lose. They lose in overtime to the Chicago Bears. I forget what the score was, but they lost in overtime. It was ridiculous. Anyways, Lions win today. Obviously, the Lions winning today was huge because it's a short week ahead. And when you think about short weeks ahead and what the Detroit Lions have to do, the Detroit Lions have to keep pace because the Vikings won today. The Packers are playing a Brock Purdy-less 49ers team. And look, under no circumstances, none whatsoever, could Detroit afford to lose against Indy or Jacksonville or perhaps Chicago. They got a big game coming up with Green Bay in a couple weeks on Thursday Night Football on Amazon. And then they got some games in between there that are really tough. Buffalo, going to Chicago, going to San Francisco, who's going to be fighting for their playoff lives. This schedule right here was huge. But the Detroit Lions, for the first time, if we go and we look at this, it's not up here, but this one right here. First running back tandem in NFL history to rush for 10 plus touchdowns in consecutive seasons as Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in consecutive seasons. And also, the Lions have not allowed a TD in consecutive games for the first time since 1999, which is an absolutely phenomenal stat. And it looked like Aaron Glenn was having a time of his life just sitting on the bench. So it was a great game. In terms of winning the game, it wasn't a great game in terms of the excitement of the game. I think we're all aware that this was kind of a boring game in terms of the way it went down. But nevertheless, the Lions win 24-6 to the Indianapolis Colts. And look, this is what you wanted. Now, the Lions did cover the 7.5 because it was 7.5. The over-under didn't hit, which this is the first time in a while that the over-under didn't hit for the Lions because usually they go over by themselves. So that's how it goes. But if we look at the statistics, this was a Colts statistics, 11 for 28 for Anthony Richardson, 172 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. I thought Detroit would bait him into a pick, but they couldn't get him in there. Jonathan Taylor, under 40 yards. I thought he'd get at least 40 yards, but he got 35 yards on 11 carries. He was 3.2 per carry. And obviously, Anthony Richardson was the guy who was carrying the ball for them. He was doing a pretty good job at 10 carries, 61 yards at 6.1 a carry. Josh Downs, again, I thought he would be more of a threat. He seemed to be getting shut down today, but Michael Pittman had 6 receptions, 96 yards. Alec Pierce, 1 reception, 39 yards. And then Josh Downs had 3 receptions for 27 yards, which is totally debatable. And as we go forward into Thursday, when you look at Thursday, this is what Dan Campbell said. Dan Campbell said, on the injury suffered Sunday, I feel okay about those 3 of those guys. Those 3 would be Dave Montgomery, Taylor Decker, and Carlton Davis. Said Khalif Raymond could still need more time. And look, when you're in a short week playing the Bears on Thanksgiving, it's going to be rough to really get a gauge of who's going to play. Anytime you play on Thursday, it's going to be rough to kind of figure out who's going to play on Thursday night. But this one's Thursday afternoon on a 12 o'clock. So that's a little bit different than a Thursday at 8 o'clock. Just hours that's all that you need. And that's going to be the critical question now. If Carlton Davis can come back, cool. Taylor Decker can come back, cool. But don't risk it for the rest of the season. I'd rather, if we don't have them for the Bears game, we could run Gibbs out there. Hopefully Terrion's back. Hopefully we can get some more reps for Emmanuel Mosley because Kendall Vildor looked absolutely awful. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with this Detroit Lions team moving forward. All right. Here's one thing. We would be doing a live podcast at Three Kings Sports Cards and Collectibles in downtown Detroit. That's on Griswold, 1515 Griswold. Jerseys, you can get cards and more. So if you got kids, this is a great place to go. Obviously, everyone wants to tailgate, but if you have kids and you want to have like a fun atmosphere, this will be doing it. We'll be there for the Packers game as well on Thursday Night Football. So stay tuned to the details on that, and we will bring you the details on that as well. For the Lions, and we're just recapping this game really quick, and then we'll talk about going forward. But for the Lions, that's the Colts. For the Lions, they had Jared Goff was 26 for 36, 269 yards, 7.5 yards per pass. Gibbs had 90 yards on 21 carries. Montgomery was doing a good job until he got hurt, banged up a little bit. He had eight carries for 37 yards, a touchdown, and he ran 4.6 per carry. JMO had a 4-yard rush. Craig Reynolds had a 6-yard rush. Jameson Williams led the team in receiving with 64 yards, 5 receptions. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 62 yards, 6 receptions. Tim Patrick, 55 yards, 4 receptions. 36 yards for Montgomery at 3 catches. Brock Wright, 2 receptions for 24 yards. Laporta, I don't know what's going on with Laporta. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Laporta, 3 yards, 3 receptions, 19 yards, and Gibbs had 3 receptions for 9 yards, which don't make any sense. We look at the I don't know why it did that, but whatever. All right. So if you were here in the post game, if you were here in the pregame, you did watch the pregame podcast. I talked to you about the intermediate passing. That was what the Colts struggle with. It seemed like Detroit really got to them in the intermediate role. For some reason, I don't know what was going on with the offense, but they just couldn't really put together drive. They couldn't put together drives. And you look at the Colts. I think this was a mismatch, but obviously the Colts played really, really well. In a couple facets, but we talked about that in the podcast. We also talked about the rushing game. Their rushing defense was pretty brutal. They were 143.8. Detroit got, if I believe correctly, I think they got 143 just on the nose, something close to that. But that's what it is, and it's a short week for the Colts, and obviously, and I mean for the Lions, and obviously, here's 2 things that I noticed about this game right off the hop. I noticed, I don't know what's going on with Sam Laporta. Like, I really don't understand what's going on with Sam Laporta. It seems like Jared Goff and Sam Laporta, they really can't get a connection together. Last year was better. I felt like last year they had more of a connection. They had more of a rhythm. They had more of an opportunity to get better. Every week you thought Sam Laporta was going to really show out. This year it's a little bit different because if you follow fantasy or anything like that, if you have Sam Laporta on your team, he's been not good. And it's just interesting to see what's happening with Sam Laporta and Goff. I don't think they're off. I think it was when Sam Laporta was injured and they didn't get the time together, but they should be rolling. Sometimes it looks like they're rolling. Sometimes it looks like they're ready to go, but it's an interesting dynamic. I don't know if anybody in the comments has a comment about that, but we'll talk about it. Let's get to some comments here on the Detroit Lions News podcast. You take away several of them. This is from Ken Fisher. You take away several of them holding plays against the Colts, and this game might have turned out different. Ross says AJ is really underrated. What he has this defense doing. I think he's meant AG, but we're gonna let that pass. Darcy says the Colts D line. Stu says love me some Lions and agree 100%. Oh, this is a good comment by Darcy right here. The Bears don't cover the tight end. TJ had a day with 140 yards. If you look at the Bears, it's interesting because the Bears are one of the teams in the NFL that are horrendously bad at covering the tight end. Darcy hits a really good point right here. One of the things that I've seen from research, from looking at fantasy betting and everything like that, when you watch the Chicago Bears, Tremaine Edmonds is a liability in coverage. That's the guy who usually covers him. Brisker is out for the year, so that kind of really holds him off. So maybe Sam Laporta will have a day next week, and maybe it will be Sam Laporta day because Lord knows this Detroit Lions team needs to have a good day on Thanksgiving because it hasn't happened in a couple years. Leo says Laporta has something going on. I agree. I don't look, I don't usually say it lightly or I don't take it lightly or nothing, but like Sam Laporta should be a lot better than he's been. And he hasn't been as good as he's been as of late. So it's a very, very interesting dynamic. Um, Steve says, "Great show. Figured you'd be in Indy right now." Well, I was gonna go to Indy, but things changed. So I had to get some things get done around here. So I was gonna do that. So almost went to Indy. That would have been good. It seemed like a lot of Lions fans were there. That's fantastic. Obviously, wherever Lions fans go, they're there. So Leo says we have a lot of key players out. I really pray Monty is okay. Um, yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's a short week ahead for the Detroit Lions. We know that it's always a crazy week when the Detroit Lions are playing on Thanksgiving because, like I said earlier in the podcast, I don't know if people seen it, but when you talk about Thursday afternoon compared to Thursday night, like the Packers game is a Thursday night. The afternoon game against the Bears is a Thursday afternoon game. I've always been told by people who have been playing in the NFL that one of the worst things about playing on Thanksgiving is a Thursday afternoon. They said if it was a Thursday night, it might be a lot better. If it was a Thursday, like where when the what the time the Cowboys play, it might be a lot better. But it just every time you play on Thursday afternoon, it's always rough, and that's what everyone always says about that, and it's very very interesting. Um, but yeah, it's this game against the Chicago Bears. Obviously, you want to put your best foot forward. Obviously, you are trying to eliminate that streak that you have of losing on Thanksgiving. And today was a good step, but obviously you're going to know more about Monty, Davis, Decker, Raymond over the next couple days. I don't know. I think they're all going to be questionable decisions. You got a short period of time before you have to make a decision if they're going to go or not. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're probably Wednesday comes out with the injury report, maybe even Tuesday. Sometimes I think it's usually Wednesday on Thanksgiving week, but you're going to know really quickly whether Monty is going to be able to play. But I rather, if they're going to hold people out, I rather hold them out for this game and have them for the Packers game because the Packers game seems like that's going to be a Donnybrook. But like Dan Campbell said, he said it on the injuries suffered today. I feel okay about these three of these guys. You mentioned Decker, Montgomery, and Davis, so that's good. But he said Khalif Raymond could miss some time, and Khalif's been a hell of a player on the punt return. He's also been a great player as a wide receiver, and we're gonna miss that. But you know what haven't the Lions been through this year? They're missing Davenport. They're missing Hutchinson, Derek Barnes. They missed Terry Arnold today. They're missing Alex Anzalone, and still every game they're coming to play, and it just goes to show you about that next man up mentality that the Detroit Lions have. It's pretty phenomenal. It's obviously what Dan Campbell preaches. So I'm gonna pull up this stat. I have to upload it to my StreamYard, but basically this is the first time the Detroit Lions have started 10-1. Um, let me pull it up. Let me pull it up. I don't know why it didn't load up here, but we're gonna do it on the fly. Right here. Boom. Weird. All right. Yeah. So this is the first time. It's still not loading. What the hell's going on? Anyways, um, oh, for teams, yeah. What the hell's going on? All right, we're gonna try it. Let's go through some comments right now. That early buy sucked for us. We could use one now. Yeah, I think we could use one now. In terms of the buy really sucks because of when it happened, but it did end up helping Detroit. There's really no good use for a buy at this point. Luckily, you're gonna get a mini buy with the Green Bay Packers game. That's gonna be like a little mini buy. It's gonna help out Detroit a little bit, but for the most part, you know, bye weeks are bye weeks, and the Lions have had so many injuries. I really don't think a bye week would have really mattered at this point, to be honest. Leo says, "Who would replace Monty?" Well, who's going to replace Monty? Um, who's going to replace Monty is going to be very, very easy. Obviously, Jameer Gibbs is going to replace Monty in terms of his production and everything like that. Um, but moving forward, like I think you're going to see Craig Reynolds get some runs. I think you're going to see them mix it up with Craig Reynolds and maybe Sione Vaki gets in here because he can show that he can run. But um, if Monty can't go, cool, that's fine with me. But it'll be very, very interesting to see what they do here with Monty if Monty misses anything. Don't want St. Brownberg turning kicks. You know what? I said the same thing. I really did. I was like, please, just no, no, no. No to St. Brown returning kicks. But then you're dealt with this whole thing like, who do you make return kicks? Do you make James Williams return kicks? Do you make like there's not many people that can return kicks, and you're kind of stretched with your roster constraints, especially your game day roster. You can only put 51 out there, so you're not putting an offensive lineman or defensive lineman or a linebacker out there. Then you got to look at a cornerback and who you're going to put back there. And then if they make a mistake on the punt return and it ends up at 6 points, what does it effing matter who is back there? To be honest, so I kind of get why they put St. Brown back there because he is sure-handed. I really don't think they said, hey, St. Brown, don't be taking any risk with returning a punt that doesn't really need to be returned. Yeah, Raymond is going to be tough to do without Decker also since he protects Goff. But, go back to what Dan Campbell said. Dan Campbell said that Decker, Montgomery, and Davis are going to be okay. So I think that will be okay. But losing a guy like Decker would suck. Obviously, I saw Sewell at one point get up gingerly, and I was worried as hell that he would be hurt. But he's okay on that portion. Notice Kildor didn't keep up. I think you mean Kindor, but yes, he does kill drives. His name is Kindle Vildor. So that's a very good way to push up the names. Notice Kildor didn't keep up yet. He didn't keep up. And if you look at the stats for the Colts right here, gotta get rid of that comment. If you look at the stats, I mean, I believe Michael Pittman got most of his yards against Kindle Vildor, if I'm not mistaken. You look at the Lions and you look at the way they were playing in that game. It's just Kendall Vildor got absolutely wiped. And I said at one point on the page, the Detroit Lions news page, I said, look, at one point last year you had Cam Sutton. At one point last year you had Cam Sutton and you had Kendall Vildor. You've done a 180 in terms of your cornerback play. It's been phenomenal, and I think a lot of people that hate that they've been hard on Terrion Arnold. I think today they got a little glimpse of what life is like without TA. I think TA has been a really, really good addition to this team, and obviously with the Rakestraw missing time, now he's on the IR, so it sucks because you're going back to Kindle Vildor, and Kindle Vildor is a good depth piece, but this is what you're talking about when you go to depth pieces. And obviously Emmanuel Mosley is coming back, so that's going to be very, very interesting to see what he could do moving forward from there. Let's get to some more chats. Jeremy is on here. Monty is fine according to coach. Monty was dressed in the sideline the entire second half. Raymond is the guy that they say will miss. Yeah. This is an interesting one because this is what I think a lot of people don't really understand. Jeremy says kneecap biting with Warrior City Lions. He does a great podcast there. T says TA hasn't given up a TD all year, and he's right. And it's interesting because you look at this defense, and this defense has been really, really good. When you think about what we just talked about early in the podcast about this statistic right here. Lions have not allowed a TD in a consecutive games for the first time since 1999. I really don't know where you were in 1999. I know that I was 4 years old, because I was born in '94. So let me see. Yeah, 4 years old. So that's wild. But yeah, it's just this is a good time for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, defense has been very surprising to me, in every facet because nowhere along the lines that I think the Detroit Lions defense would be a top 15 defense. I knew that they had the pieces, but when Hutch went out, I thought, oh boy, here we go. This is where it's going to go haywire. And I think we can credit Lee McNeil for his pass rushing that's really helped out. I think we can credit Carlton Davis and Terry Arnold for being great players. I think you can say that, Jack Campbell has been really excellent this year in terms of his development. Rodrigo stepped in, Ben Neiman stepped in, obviously Alex Anzalone coming out, and you have your two safeties in the back who are just ball hawking the hell out of teams. I thought they would get an interception today, but I knew for a fact that this was put in Anthony Richardson's head all week. These safeties that you're going against, please do not throw over the middle against them. Please do not throw anywhere near them and try to, take what's underneath. I think that's what they did because they took him out of the game. Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, they weren't effective in terms of the turnovers, but they were effective in the pass game. But you could tell that the Colts defense really did. I mean, the Colts offense really did something to kind of keep Kirby and Brian Branch from making the most impact. And I think you're going to see a lot more teams try to do that because they know that if they pass over the middle, they go towards Kirby, they go towards Brian Branch, that could be picked off. And it really makes it easier for for Aaron Glenn to call defense because when you think about those two guys in the back end, if there's a guy covering and if you're in cover two, there's two guys back, they're probably going to go over the middle. If you do the zone in, they're probably going to try to throw it out to a fly route or a deep post route or something like that, deep cross or something like that. That's what they're going to have to do moving forward. But this was an interesting one as well. Detroit is 10-1, the best start to any season in franchise history. That's 10 plus consecutive wins in consecutive seasons. It's the first time in franchise history. So we have seen the Detroit Lions do a complete 180. We went from the Matt Patricia years where they could not do nothing correctly. We went from Dan Campbell being 0-10-1, and he said that in his press conference, to where they are now. It's pretty remarkable, and it shows what real coaching, what a real organization does when they have the talent, when they put together talent. It's fantastic. But if we go to the team stats, let's go to the team stats for a minute. It seemed like if you look at the team stats, 72 plays for Detroit, 49 plays for the Colts, 390 yards for the Lions compared to 268 for the Colts. 5 yards per play for 5.5. It's pretty similar. Passing yards 253 to 172. Detroit had 137 rushing yards, so they almost got to the average given up by the Indianapolis Colts, which was 143. The Colts didn't get 100 yards rushing. Again, good job by the Lions defense. 26 first downs to 11 first downs for the Detroit Lions in terms of their differential. They controlled the ball for 37.01 minutes to 22:59 for the Colts. I know people are going to say, I said it too. This was the most boring game I've seen all season. But what we've seen in this game, I think was the game plan coming in for Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, and Aaron Glenn. You looked at the time of possession, or if you look at it again, it was 37:01, and they took up 72 plays. I think it was really they wanted to juice the clock down. They really didn't want to give the Colts. They didn't want to come in this game, doing a, they didn't want an offensive shootout. They wanted just to let's kill the clock. Let's get some touchdowns and let's win this game. That's basically the way they did it. If you look at the team stats again, 37:01, they basically controlled most of the game, and that's because when you're a good team, you could do that. And a lot of times, I heard Bill Belichick say this on I think it was that show on CW that they have, the NFL Weekly or whatever that's called. But he said when he was with the Patriots, if he had a short game week, he would run the game before the short week. So if he had a game Thursday, Sunday, he would run the ball a lot, just a lot, or you do short passes, or you do something like that. And the reason for that, it was very interesting what he said. The reason for that was because he didn't wanna put his players in a position where they got hurt before the Thursday night game, which Detroit plays on a Thursday afternoon. So his idea was, I don't wanna get my players hurt. I wanna, kill the clock. I don't want my defense getting, like, absolutely gassed before we play on Thursday because it's a little bit of a rough ride to try to get your defense back to working order before Thursday because in the NFL, man, it doesn't matter who you play. It's a rough game. It's a tough game, and most of these guys are not recovered by Thursday. So what the Lions did, I thought, was a little bit interesting. They kind of took a play out of Bill Belichick's book, and I think it's a play out of Sean Payton's book too, because Sean Payton would do the same thing on Thursdays. I went back and I looked at some of his statistics. He would run the ball more on Sundays before Thursdays. I think it was for Sean Payton. It was he ran the ball 43 times. I think 5 times before Thursday night games. And then the rest of them, he would run like 20. He would run 28 to 33. So it's a very interesting dynamic when you talk about trying to prep your team for Thursday afternoon and Thursday night. So you look back at it and you look at some of the coaches that are really successful at getting their team ready to play. That was something that I thought was very interesting. I went back and I looked at Sean Payton, what he did on Thursday nights, and this is probably who Dan Campbell learned it from. Because if you go back over the last couple seasons, the Lions run a lot before the Sunday game, before the Thursday Thanksgiving game. They do. And I don't know the specifics on the carries, but you know that Jahmyr Gibbs, he ran where is it? Jahmyr Gibbs ran for 21 carries. Montgomery had 8 carries. So you got what do you got? 29, 30, 31, and 33. So there's 33 carries by the Detroit Lions. That kind of meshes up with what the Saints did before they played on Thursday night football. It was 34 to 45 carries that they ran. And I think if Dave Montgomery didn't get hurt, I think that could have been at least 20. I mean, not 20, at least at least 12 or 13 or 14. So it's a very interesting dynamic the way they played. Obviously, I thought it was a very boring game today. But when you think about what the Detroit Lions are doing, I mean, that's exactly what they were doing. Let's get to some comments. Let's see. Jeremy says he was 29 at the time. Yeah, I'm 30 right now, so that's pretty similar. So, um, that was I'd be probably before. I don't know. I can't do math on the fly. You know that, Jeremy. Um, we went around and pound even when your Thunder leaves the game. Look, they did a great job at just doing what they could do to pound the rock. It was a great thing. And then Jeremy says a good point right here. The reason the first half was Colts had the off at the time of the possession by running more. Once we scored a third TD, they had to abandon the run. Good point by you. I think it was a good game for Detroit that the Colts ran a lot too, because, like I said, Dan Campbell loves that area where he could just go in there and do what he wants to do. Jeremy says this again. Belichick on the Lions keep the time of possession in your favor. Not many can. That right there is exactly what I say. If you keep the time possession in your favor, a lot of times you're going to win that football game. The Patriots did it for years with Brady and Belichick. They did it for years. It wasn't about the thing about the Chiefs dynasty not the Chiefs dynasty, the Patriots dynasty that made it so special was they would go in every game and they would try to win time possession every single time. Because if they knew that if they had more time possession than the other team, they were going to win a good amount of those games. So good on them. It's good on them for that's exactly how you play football. See if you see if you can lobby for a 12th man at defense. Man. And I see you're talking about you're 54. I'm 30, so I don't know. It is what it is. Let's go. Let me pull up some other stuff. I think the defense. Where is it? I don't think I pulled it up, to be honest. Hmm. Anyways, the Lions win this game 24-6, and so again, it's this typical game before Thursday on Thanksgiving. You kind of just want to get rid of it, do the things that you need to do, and I thought it was very, very interesting. But this is the first time the Detroit Lions are 10-1 to start the best start to any season in franchise history. 10 plus wins in consecutive seasons is most. That's for the first time in franchise history. So the Lions are doing a lot of stuff correctly, and obviously with this game coming up on a short week against the Chicago Bears, this is going to be an interesting time for the Detroit Lions because obviously with the injuries that they have on the ball on both sides of the ball, with Decker getting injured, Carl Davis getting injured, obviously Monty getting injured, there's a lot of opportunity for them to kind of figure out what they're going to do. Uh, Being it's such a short week, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how they manage these guys with the injuries. Do they have them come in and play on Thursday and risk more injury, or do they hold them out? And I think they're going to hold. I think if they don't believe that they're close to 100%, they're going to hold them out. That's my belief. I don't think Carlton Davis is hurt that much. I've seen some people online that were talking about he might have just hyperextended it or something. It looked really bad because it was a non-contact injury, but hopefully he's okay. Dave Montgomery, he was dressed in pads, as Jeremy said in the comments, so he should be fine. Docker came in for a little bit. He should be fine. All we hope, but obviously Khalif Raymond can make time, and obviously we told you about that with this was a quote from Dan Campbell. I feel okay about three of those guys, and those three were Davis, Montgomery, and Decker, and then Raymond could miss some more time. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the Detroit Lions do in terms of how do they manage the injuries that they have, knowing that they have a Thursday night game the week after against the Packers. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how they kind of manage that, and what do they do to kind of help out their injured players. And I know that Emmanuel Mosley got activated, so he should be in a better shape to come out. I think Terrion Arnold can come out. That's probably why they held him out of this game. That's my opinion. But Ray Shaw was put on injured reserve, so he's going to miss 4 games at least. So you can't count on him. So if TA can't go and Davis can't go, it opens up a little bit of opportunity for the Chicago Bears when they come in on that short week, because the Bears, as much as we don't think that they're a great team. They're 4-7 now. They lost to the Minnesota Vikings today. They do have offensive talent. Caleb Williams is a little bit of a wild card. You watch him play. It's very, very interesting to watch him play. He holds onto the ball way too long. And then there's times that he thinks he's back in college and he could run around and avoid sacks, and it just doesn't work like that in the NFL. So Zadarius Smith could have some sacks on Thanksgiving, but I think the biggest thing about this short week right here is the Lions have an opportunity to really settle some scores. Obviously, last Thanksgiving they lost to the Green Bay Packers. That was not a good game by them by any stretch of the imagination. That was when they were in that little funk that they had in November, which usually you have a little bit of a funk. Detroit hasn't had a funk yet, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But they're a good team. So I just look at it like this. The short week, Chicago Bears come into town. Good chance to break the streak of the Thanksgiving game wreckage that's been happening, because the Lions haven't won a Thanksgiving game in years. I think the best opportunity they had to win a Thanksgiving game was against the Buffalo Bills, and I think that game got away from them a little bit, but it is what it is. And this game today was just a little bit different. It was kind of like, let's just not play. Let's just not hope. They were hoping that they don't, make mistakes. That's what they're making. All right, comments, and we'll get to this. And we've seen it 2 weeks in a row versus the Bears. Can't go prevent, have the same man coverage. I was curious why we didn't use Vaki to put in the game. Anzalone expected to return week 17, ligament or nerve damage. But we also had this all from Jeremy. But we had 3 offense linemen out versus the Bears and Packers last year. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Hopefully we have less injuries this year, especially on Thanksgiving. But with what's going on with this Lions team, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens for this team moving forward. So very, very interesting. Obviously, It's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this team. All right, let's get to some more. Let's get to some more things. Obviously, if you guys are going to the game, we have a live podcast at versus the Bears versus the Packers, both on Thursday at Three Kings Sports Cards and Collectibles in Detroit, Michigan, on Griswold 1515 Griswold. Jerseys, cards, and more. So if you have kids, this is a good opportunity to get them, out there. And obviously, if you're going to watch Thanksgiving parade, come into the shop to get warm, and we will be there. I'll talk some football. People will have some fun. It'll be cool. They have a lot of stuff there, so you can do that before the game, and then you can get a jersey potentially if you want. So that'll be interesting right there. But the Lions beat the Colts 24-6. They covered that 7.5-point spread. Over under was 50.5. It went under for the first time in a couple games for Detroit. But we'll see what happens on Thursday. And we'll see you Thursday on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football. Obviously, it's a shorter podcast. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. So I will see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. And I will see you in the next one.